Begin the current Daf, Mesechtes Kesuvos Daf Nun. Begin 3 lines down at the top of the Yomid, but the Gemara continues on the theme of the previous Daf regarding Takanis Usha. We had brought it in because it related to the halachas that we're discussing regarding the rights that a father has and a husband has in the woman, and one of those were the Takanis of Usha as relates to the parents, the children. And our Gemara continues with different takanas that were made in Usha. Everyone is joining for today's daf. Some of the things discussed in today's daf are this concept of, like we said, takanas Usha, where when the Sanhedrin was in Usha, so they made many different takanas. A few of them that our Gemara discusses is hamavazvaz al yivazv yesim mechemish. Someone who's giving out his money to tzedakah should not give out more than a fifth. Another takana was she'adam is galglin b'noi at shtei maser shana, that a person should try to engage his son to try to learn up until the year of 12. After that, he gets down to his, takes off the belt and makes sure that he gets down learning. Another one is the Isha Shemacha b'nechse melug b'chayi balo mesa. If the woman sells her nechse melug, her own private assets in her husband's lifetime in mesa, and she dies, the husband could take it away from anyone who bought it during their marriage. The Gemara brings machlokes regarding mezainis habas, that the daughter gets fed. If it's nigbis mimetal ed, she can collect that mezainis from movable items from the orphans. The nichsim melug is brought up in today's daf, that those are assets that it's not put into the ksuba, it's a woman's own stuff. And there's a discussion regarding the parameters of those nachasim. Tonight ksuba are certain stipulations of the dowry of the marriage between the husband and the wife. And a few of them are mezainis almana, that the widow gets fed after her husband passed away until she gets remarried. Mezainis habas, the daughter gets fed. And kesubas benin dichrin is that the male sons that they had together inherit the woman's kesuba, even if she died before her husband, they inherited after the father dies. Nachasim shesh machais and nachasim shem machais. Nachasim shesh machais refers to land which are everlasting, so it has a chais, meaning there's insurance, you can always collect from it. Whereas nachasim shem machais refers to movable assets which are not everlasting, so there's no responsibility to it. It could get lost, it can get burned, something can happen to that. So begin the current daf nun, 3 lines down at the top of the Yomid. The Gemara continues with additional takanas of Usha. Another teaching from Rabbi Shloimy, who was saying over these takanas of Usha. But Usha is keen, and Usha they instituted. Hamavazvez, someone's dispersing to the paupers. Al yivazvez yosim mechemish should not disperse from his estate more than a fifth, so that he should not have to come on to people. Hamavazvez al yivazvez yosim mechemish, whoever gives out his money should not give him more than a fifth. Shemitzach Rabbi, he might need people, which Tosfos brings from the Yerushalmi that the first time he gives out a fifth. From that point onward, every single year he gives a fifth of the profit. It was actually a story of an individual who wanted to give out more than a fifth of his monies, and his friends didn't let him. His friend, and who's that? That was Rabbi Sheva. Now, some say actually it was Rabbi Sheva who wanted to. His friend didn't let him. Who's that? That was Rabbi Kiva. Some say it's Michael. What's the pasuk that tells us that you shouldn't be giving out? We have all these Rebbe Shemasses that they give away everything that they have. Where do we see that the halach is not like that you're not supposed to give out more than a fifth of your money? Micro. It's a pasuk in Bereshis where Yaakov says, where actually that's by Yaakov, yeah. Whatever you're going to give me, I will, we translate as I will surely tithe for you, but it's a double terminology. It's aser asrana, I will tithe. 2 isurim, what's 2/10? We go to math, I'm sure you used to teach math, you have to know basic math, right? What's 2/10? Right, is 1/5. So you see that you give not more than a fifth. Now the Gemara says, it's not true. This would be a good math class. The first tenth was not like the second tenth. Why not? Because, like Rashi explains, when you take the first tenth, you remain with 9. So let's say you have 10. So you take 1/10 from 10, you took away 1, you left with 9. Now, when you take off a 10th from 9, that's not the same as a 10th from 10. That's not a fifth. Right? You're taking a 10th from 9, or let's say whatever the numbers, it would be another 0, so that would be 0.9, whatever it is, but it wouldn't be exactly a fifth. So Amar Rav Ashi says, no, read the pasuk Asrenu. and we have this a lot of times with a lot of mathematical equations that people ask questions. The Gemara is not exactly, and like someone like the Vilna Gaon will show you have to read the pasuk of like pi, and the famous like you have to read it in a way. So the Gemara is addressing it over here. It says no asrena. It doesn't say aser to you. It says asrenu. I will type it, which is labasra kikama, comparing the last one to the first one. In other words, the second type will be exactly like the first type. It won't be based on the 9, it will be based on the original 10, and therefore you see that the double typing is exactly a fifth, and therefore you see that Yaakov, although he wanted to take as much as possible for Hashem, they say he was only saying up until a fifth, and not more than that. Now, Amar of Shimon Bar Ashi says that Shmur Halalu, these teachings that were below, with all these takanas of Usha that we were saying in the previous daf, and we continue on to this daf, Mismai Tais V'Holches, they keep on diminishing from the amount of Amayram that the Messiah is saying it over. Meaning, the first teaching was Omer Below, Omer Shlakish, in the name of Rabbi Chanina. And then the second teaching was Rabbi Below, Omer Shlakish, and the third teaching was just Rabbi Below. So he says it's a manayich and a manik to teach you in the order of the halachas. I actually just talked with someone just before, like he says Chassam Sefer says all these mnemonics are all because he said halacha, and I said that's Baishas Loi, it's a simon. So all these simonim, Chassam Sefer says, has great teachings, that it's not just a remez, it has also a deep side, the satire inside of it. But he says that if you want to remember the order of these halachas to know how they kept on getting less, it's ketanim kasvu bizbizu. That the children, the minors, they write and they disperse and they get rid of it. So that's the three teachings. The first teaching, which if you want to know what the Messiah was, who had 3, who had 2, who had 1, a person's children when they're young, we said you have an obligation to feed them. That's ketana. That was the first kanza usha that we mentioned. Then kasur refers to someone who writes away all his estate to his children. They have an obligation to feed him. And bizbizu is this halacha of amarazvus al yivazvus yes mechemer. So now you won't get confused which one had 3 amaram, which one had 2, which one had 1. I mean, we read it as if, okay, we got to get through the names to get to the teachings. But especially by Hasidim, they say that the grace Iris comes from whoever is the one who said over the teaching, and you have to be Reis, it's Merecha. So I'm saying it's very important, you see from the Gemara, how many and who said over what. So we're saying, if you want to remember the order, so the Zichru people have it really cut out for them here. They just have the Ketanim, Kazma, Bizbazu, and that's, you already know what the 3, 2, 1 was. Now, continuing with takanas of Usha, Amar of Yitzchak, he says, Usha's kin, another takana of Usha was, Shehei Adam is galgal in benai. Like the word megalgal is like, should roll around, should roll with it. You know, there's something called rolling with the punches. So if the son refuses to learn, so you roll with it. Easy, you weasel your way, soft words. Till the age of 12. From that point on, which literally means that you go down with him to his life. Meaning, you pursue him with the strap and with, we're not getting supper tonight, right? Because you didn't learn well in school today. Someone says, is that really so? And Rashi points out, although the famous Mishnah of says that when a boy is 10 years old, it's Mishnah, that's not Yoredim L'chayev, that's still part of L'kalkal. When he reaches 12, that's when you start, taking off the belt. Rav says, is that really so? But Rav said to Shmuel Bashilas, why Shmuel Bashilas? Because, as Rashi brings, he was a Malamed Tanaikis, as the Gemara brings other places in Baba Basta. So he was a school teacher. So he told him, he was telling him a chinuch class, it says, look, under the age of 6, don't accept the boy into your class. Bar Shis, to be 6, Kabul, accept him. And stuff him with Torah like an ox. Which, by oxen, the way they would eat, they do what's called oivsinaisa. They would, mom's like a trough. They just stuff him and push it down into his mouth. So it sounds like at age 6 is when you start forcing him, and not at age 12. So, and it plays here again, addresses the Mishnah Avos, that either Mishnah Avos says at age 5 is Lamikra. That's again legal, but you don't start force feeding him until age 6. But so says the Gemara yes, it's not a difficulty. Why? You stuff him, you force feed him like an ox at age 6, but you don't beat him up until after he's 12 years old. That's one approach. You can say, look, no, it's not difficult. They're talking about different things. Ha, Rab that said that it's age 6 is Lamikra, is for Chumash. Ha, but from Usha is Lamishna. That's at age 12. So that's like Tessa pointed out, like you start maybe a year earlier than then you start force feeding, and you start forcing a little bit like a year or two later. But again, those two different age groups are either because they're different stages or because one's for Chumash, which is earlier, and one's for Mishnah, which is later. Because I'm Abai, like Abai says, he says, my mother told me, Bar Shes Lamikra. A 6-year-old is for Chumash, which Taisus brings, it must mean what's called 6 in 1 day, meaning what we call age 6, because that's similar to the other teachings, and not getting into the 6th year. Bar Eser, a 10-year-old is La Mishnah, is for, and that's why his proof is from the Mishnah and Mesechus Avos, that means what we call 10, not in the 10th year, or sometimes 10 means 9, but it means 10 La Mishnah. And Bar Tleiser, and this is a Machlokes Rashi and Taisus, the 13-year-old, the Tanisa Me'is Li'es, is when he fasts a full 24 hours on a fast, that you have to fast the whole day. Rashi learns that before that, you're going to have like the years before, let's say 2 years before, as the Gemara says, then you start fasting some hours, but not the full fast. A full fast is at 13. But tonight is by a girl, which for some reason, Taisa asked this on Rashi, but for some reason Rashi says that, yeah, because a girl is quicker to have strength, because she doesn't get weaker from learning Torah, so by her it's Bas Tracer. It's when she's 12. So Rashi explains that 12 is the 12th year itself. Not 12 in 1 day, not Bas Mitzvah, because that's biblical. That's when she brings 2 puberty years, and she, of course, has to keep all the mitzvahs. We don't have to learn that out from the wet nurse of Abaya, which although he says my mother, we know Abaya's mother died in childbirth. It's his nurse. But Taisa says no, it's actually talking about the biblical halacha, and it's coming to tell us actually you don't have to have chinuch for the year before. So that's a discussion. Do we mean 12 and 13, the actual Bar Mitzvah year, or like Rashi says, actually the year before that? When we say 12 and 13 means what we call actually 11 and 12. 12 could mean in the 12th year. Now, another teaching from Amar Baya, it says, that my mother told me, Harbar Shes, this 6-year-old, the Tarkale Akarba, that a scorpion bites him, the Yomid the Mishlam Shes, on the day that he finishes the 6th year, Loi Chaye is not going to live unless, this is the way Rashi learns it, with a well-known medicine. Maya, so what's the healing? So that's how Rashi learns it. Taisa learns it that no, it means what's the healing that he should not get bit in the first place. So you go out with that off spray into not to get the ticks and all the thing, because he says it can't mean afterwards, because the Gemara already said that Loi Chaye. So that's again difference how to understand what asusa is. But what's the medicine for this? It's merorsa. It's the bile of the dadia chivarta, of a white vulture. B'shichra with beer. When you choose neshafia, you smear it, and neshaki, and you give him to drink it with the beer. Another teaching, Haibar Shata, or some have the gears to Haibar Shis again. Either it's a 6-year-old or a year-old. The Torah lazy Buddha, if he was bit by a bee, the Yomid the Mishlam Shata, on the year that he completes the year, Loichai is not going to survive. Maya Susi, also what's the medicine? Atzvasa the dikla, what you do is you take the vine that grows around the palm bast, that grows around the palm tree, that grows in like the wild, that it wraps around like the vine that grows around a grapevine. You go and you take the b'mayu with water, the shafi b'neshake, you smear it and you give it to drink, and again that will be the medicine. Another teaching related to these ideas about how to teach children Torah, something of Katina, which was related to that Usha Hiskinu about how to deal with kids and learning. So he says, Kol HaMachnas says B'nai, whoever brings his son in to learn Torah, Pachis mi ben sheish, under the age of 6, Ratz acharav, so he's going to run after that child to make him healthy. Vein Magia is not going to reach him because he's going to be in danger of dying because of the great weakness, because it's hard and intense to learn Torah. And if you do it under the age of 6, developmentally, that's too fragile. Now, Yekidam, those actually have a slightly different wording, which makes all the difference. No, his friends will run after him to try to be as smart as him in learning. They're not going to be able to reach him because he's going to be so smart. You got him started already learning Rashba at age 4, and so he's going to be way ahead of everyone. The Gemara says, but Tavai isn't actually both true. Chalish v'gam. Both, the father will be running after him, trying to make him healthy, and his friends will try to run after him, try to learn him, because he actually will be weak, but he'll be learning. Or Ibai said, well, if you want, you could resolve it in a different way. If he's weak, don't bring him in to learn under the age of 6 because it's dangerous, because he might become weak and die. The buddy, if he's healthy, bring him in because he's get smart and all his friends are going to try to keep up with him, and this guy's already light years ahead of the rest of his classmates. Additionally, continuing with the Usha Hiskinu, another takana, I'm going to be in Spechanin. It says, Usha Hiskinu, in Usha, the Bezdin instituted, Isha Shemachra B'Nichsi Miluk. If a woman sells from her Nichsi Miluk, Nichsi Miluk is that there are certain of the wife's assets that are not including the Kesuba. She owns the Karen, the husband is entitled to the payers, and that's what the Usha Hiskinu is, that if she sells these Nichsi Miluks, the principal, B'chaye Bala, when the husband is alive, because actually the payers he gets, and place actually says, seemingly according to Rabbi Yechon, was payers kinya peski kinya guframi, you wouldn't need a takanas usha because, of course, he owns the principal by only the payers. It would seem to be, which discusses, but only according to Rish Lakish that you need to have this takanas usha. But they instituted that if a woman sells the nifs maluk when in her husband's lifetime, and she dies, habal moisim yawakuchas. The husband could remove it from all the subsequent buyers. Why? Because although really technically the husband is a yairish, he's inheriting his wife, the Chachamim made the husband like a lokeach, so he's so to speak, the first lokeach. He bought everything from her, and now she's selling it to other people. I have rights on you first. So therefore, when she dies, he can go to all those lokuchas and say, hey, I'm going to take it because I'm the first buyer. And that was instituted in Usha. The Gemara brings a story related to this. Ashkechei Rav Yitzchak by Yisrael Bavo. Yitzchak Yisrael encountered Rav Bavo. He was with a large gathering of people of the Usha, in Usha. And Amalei said to him, Man Mada de Shmeita de Usha. Who is the master of the teaching of Usha that we quoted just before? So Amalei says it was Rabbi Yisrael Chanina. So telling me that he learned that Rabbi Yisrael Chanina was the teacher of this teaching, Arba'in Zimnin 40 times. But Domile, and it was compared to him, command the monachle bekiste as if it was in his pocket. Meaning you sometimes have money, but it's you can't retrieve it. It's in the bank, and the bank is closed or whatever, and it's somewhere deep down in the recesses of your mind. But sometimes you want to have, like, cash on you that you could use wherever you go. That's the idea. You want to have it in the forefront of your consciousness that he said over 40 times, so that he has it available to know who was his teacher. Now, continuing this theme of children that we said actually was the original Takanas Usha we mentioned in the previous stop that got into this conversation, this whole theme and string of Takanas Usha, which we said that a father has the responsibility to feed his children, although biblically he doesn't, but in Usha they were misakin. So we go and we end off the conversation with this idea. Gemara brings the pasuk into Tehillim. Ashrei shomrei mishpat. How fortunate are those who safeguard judgment. They do charity at all times. So it says the Gemara, is it possible to charity at all times? You can do tzedakah, you give when the pushka comes around in shul, you can give by the appeal. How do you do tzedakah at all times? So those should be saying should be Yavna. Fascinating teaching. Now our teachers, they expounded in Yavna, some say it was Rebbe Eliezer. This refers to someone who feeds his son and his daughters when they're young, where constantly, day and night, they're on him. And that's a charity that you don't have an obligation, as we said. There was an Usha that they instituted, or this is the very young, but be that as it may, it's a tzedakah that is at all times, because that you have with your kids. This refers to someone that takes an orphan boy or girl and brings them up in his house and he marries them off. That's a tzedakah b'chaleis. Related another pasuk in Tehillim, wealth and fortune in his house, meaning his money does not get depleted. And even so, if it's a kasai medeslad, that his charity will remain forever. What is this referring to? So there's two interpretations of Win Rav Chisda. One says, this refers to someone who learns Torah and teaches it. So it's maintained by him. So that's the hoin va'isha b'veisa. He has the wealth in his house. And yet it said kasai is a medeslad because he goes through the effort to teach it to the students. The other one says, this refers to someone who writes Tanakh, the Sefer Torah, and the Nevi'im Miksub. Mashin lachem, and he lends it out to others. So the Svam are maintained forever, they don't get depleted. And yet, Tzidkasam are Medeslad, the charity remains forever. Another pasuk in Tehillim, that famous song that we sing at Hashem Zacha, the one song that we sing at Hashem Zacha. Oh, I have a singer in my community, he says, we gotta make a new song. Got to compose a new one for this these words. But Ureivanim levanecha, you will see sons for your sons. Shalom al Yisrael, peace on the Jewish people. So what does this pasuk mean? So Rabbi Shloimy Levi says, Kivin shabanim levanecha, once there's sons to your sons, Shalom al Yisrael, there's peace on the Jewish people. Why? Because also the chalitza v'yibum. You're not going to come to chalitza and yibum, which is a difficult process, because now that there are descendants, there's no need to, if someone's going to die, that there's no children. So once you have already vanim levanecha, then you know you're not going to have to go through this situation of strife of chalitza and yibum. Or he says, Kim shabanim levanecha, once there's sons to your sons, shalom al dayane Yisrael, there's going to be peace for the judges of the Jewish people. The they're not going to come to fight who's closer, who's the first one to get the inheritance. We know the children come first. Once the children are not here anymore, so who's this? It's Eltefeta, it's the third cousin, who's considered closer to the inheritance. Once there's already Vanim Levanecha, so the Shalom al Yisrael, the Yoni Yisrael, they're not coming to fight. Now we said in the Mishnah that we said that he was expounding the words of the Kesuba. In the Kesuba, that he was comparing the two benefits. We said that Sinai Kesuba, one of them is that Habanim Yirishu, that the sons inherit, and one is Habanim Zizainu, that the daughters get fed. So Rabbi said, you compare the two of them. Just like sons will only inherit after the father passes away, obviously, so the bonus that they're going to get fed is only after the father passes away, which we said ironically, when the father's alive, he doesn't have to feed them. But after he dies, just we compare to Abban Yishu, then he has that obligation. So as we continue Tamid Beis, the Gemara brings a halacha that will relate directly back to this teaching. Yosef Rabbi Yosef Kamed Rabbi Nuna. Rabbi Yosef was sitting in front of Rabbi Nuna. The Yosef Rabbi Nuna Kamar, and Rabbi Nuna was sitting and he was saying, which Taisa discusses, it sounds like Rabbi Yosef was smaller than him, elsewhere it sounds like he was older. Taisa says you must say that there was two Rabbi Nunas. Fine. So he says, out of the following teaching, sounds very similar to the halacha about teaching, but it's on a different point. Just like the sons only inherit from real estate, so too when the daughters are going to be fed from the state, it's only from real estate that they could go ahead and make their collection from, but not from movable items. That they have no lien, they have no rights to collect for their mezainis. That was the teaching of Rav Nuna. And everyone started screaming at Rav Nuna. Now, as Rashi points out, Rav Nuna did not explain when he was saying the words Habanim Yorshin that he was going on Kesuvos Daf. As we said the previous Daf, Kesuvos Daf is that when the mother passes away, usually she gets her Kesuba when the marriage is over. That's only if the husband dies or he divorces her. If she dies first, she's not collecting anything. Now, the problem is in the Kesuba is her father, the wealthy Kvir, gives for his tafta, I'm not giving it to my daughter if it's not going to pass along my line. You're going to take it and do whatever it is. So Kesuvos Daf is a way to entice the shver to give a lot more money. He says, don't worry, your daughter's descendants will get it. Not all my other wives or whatever this and that. And therefore he's like, okay, I'm going to give her a grace and nadin, because I know that either way, even if she dies first and then you die, that her kids are going to get it. That's Kesuvos Daf. Now, so that halacha is a unique halacha in the Yerusha of the father. It's not the same as the rest of the Yerusha. They get their mother's Kesuba. He didn't say when he was saying that the sons only Yorish from the Karka that he was talking about the Kesuvos Daf. They thought he meant Stam Yerusha. That the sons only inherit Karka and they don't inherit the movable items. So the father's motorbike, all these things they don't get, only his real estate. Everyone started screaming at him. The Shavagada, when you tell me if he leaves over land, who the Artile Bondi, then his sons inherited. Yolei Shavagada, someone does not leave over real estate. Never, he wasn't from all the wealthy guys who own real estate all over half of Tom's River, everywhere. Artile Bondi, his sons don't inherit from him. He has a warehouse full of items they're not inheriting. What are you talking about? So Allah Yosef said to him, to Rabbi Nuna, who he was sitting in front of, he says, wait a second. The Dilma maybe Kesuvos Daf Kamamat? Was the master talking about the Kesuba of the male sons? Like we said, because there were these two takanas, the Chamo Masakin, of the stipulations of the Kesuba, that we learn that one from the other, as we said in the Mishnah. Now, Kesuvos Daf, we learn later on of Tzaliyav Menaf and Perak Mishnah Yinasai, that they are not collected from a top. What does that mean? The Mishnah teaches over there, Shimon says, that even if there are nechasim, but they don't have achrayas, which is a reference to metal. It's nothing up until you have nechasim that have achrayas that are in excess of the 2 kesubos by a dinner. That here the Gemara explains the halacha of the kesubos b'nindichrin as follows, as Rashi explains. It says the Mishnah there teaches if someone was married to 2 women and they died, the wives died. So 2 wives died, now the husband's still alive, an almond, and then 2 years later that almond dies. The orphans of every single one of the women are requesting their mother's ksuba. Why? For example, let's say the ksuba of one of them is more, or even if they're the same, sometimes one of the women will have more children and one of the women will have less children. So the one with less children are asking for their mother's ksuba to divide amongst themselves, and then the sons of the second one will divide their mother's ksuba amongst themselves. So it's obviously better they're dividing amongst less people. So even if the ksuba is the same amount, it's obviously they want to have their mother's ksuba divided amongst themselves. Now, they're coming from the rights of the Tanai of their mother's ksuba, which is written inside the ksuba. Ksubas b'nindichin, your male sons, the havin lichim enai that you can have from me. Inin yarkin kesef ksuba asach, they're going to inherit the monies of your ksuba, etc. Now, what the Mishnah there teaches is that if you have even just 1 dinner more than the 2 ksubas, that you'll have a biblical nachla to divide, then each one will take their mother's ksuba. But if not, they're going to have to equally divide according to the number of children, like a regular Yerusha, because if you're going to be uprooting the biblical nachla, the Rabbanan did not make this takana of ksubas b'nindichrin. So let's say the father passed away, and he leaves over $200, and the 2 mothers that died first, each one's ksuba was $100. Now, one woman had 2 children, one had 8 children. So the one with 2 children said, we want our mother's ksuba, we're going to get 50-50. We divide the inheritance amongst all the kids. From the 10 kids, there's 200, we're going to get how much? I'm not going to test it. All right, there's 20, we're not going to get that much, we're going to get much less. So they're not going to get the ksubas b'nindichrin. Why not? Because there's nothing left now for the father's nachla. You nullified halacha of Yerusha because each one took the mother's ksuba and the father's, there's nothing in his bank account. So as long as there's 1 dinner, there's $1 that we could split. Let's say it has $201, and this one's ksuba is 100, this one's 100. You'll have $1 left over that's not. They could take 50 cents, they could take 50 cents. Okay. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to allow ksubas b'nindichrin. That halach is only if the father leaves over real estate. Nechasim sheyesh lem achrayos. But if nechasim she'ein lem achrayos, that's not going to qualify, as we'll see this later on in the Masechta, for the halach of ksubas b'nindichrin. So what he was telling him was, what are we comparing here? What's this teaching of Rav Nuna, like we had in the Mishnah of Rabbi and Azariah? We're comparing these 2 takanas, ksubas b'nindichrin, and the mezainis for the bonus. They're both t'na'ay ksubah. So Rav Nuna was saying, says Rav Yosef to him, oh, I think I know what you were saying. You were saying just like ksubas b'nindichrin, that halacha is only for nechasim shel nachayis, only by karka, like we just explained. It has to be that there's some real estate left over after each children take their mother ksuba. So to the muzzin of the banis, when the daughters get fed after the father passed away, is only going to be from karka. Because we're comparing these 2 halachas, just like we said in the Mishnah, it's only la'achar misa, so it's just regarding karka, not like Yerusha in general. Of course, Yerusha is going to be for everything the father leaves over, his leather chair and his svarim or whatever this and that. You were talking ksubas b'nindichrin. So on that says Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Nun Rabbi Yosef says, Mar the Gavarabahu, you the master, you that you're a great person, Yada my kamina, you know what I was saying, that we're not going to learn out the daughters getting fed from the general Yerusha of the sons. It's from the Yerusha of the Ksubas b'nindichrin, which comes from the Tanai Ksuba, like it. That's after from Karka. That's what we're learning out from the Mazin of the Banas. Now, however, the Gemara actually does point out that Amar Rabbi Bar Yosef, that Rav actually gave sustenance mechite de aliyah, from the wheat in the attic. Meaning, when the orphans came in front of him, and the girls were claiming we need to get fed from our father's wheat, where there was no real estate for them to collect from. There was only the movable items of the wheat. He would give them the wheat. So that's actually not like we just said. We said from Rav Nuna that the halacha of the bonus nizayin is only from karka. Where brings a story that Rav would feed from the chita daliyah. Now, however, it's not so simple. The Gemara doesn't know exactly what this teaching was. Ibayluhu parnasa havya, maybe it wasn't actually mezainis per se. It was providing for the nedunya to get married. That you could collect from movable items. So umay aliyah, and actually, what does it mean aliyah? It doesn't mean like we translated the attic from the loft, and it means mi'eluya da'af. It means according to the evaluation of the willingness of the father. Ukadishmul, like Shmuel says. Amar Shmuel says, when it comes to providing for the nadin, for the ksuba, shaman be'av, we evaluate if the father's not alive anymore. We evaluate according to, was he a vatrim? Was he someone that was very forgiving? Or was he a kamtzin? Was he a very stingy man? If he would have been alive, how much would he have given to this daughter from his estate? And since we evaluate his personality, so that doesn't make a difference if it's real estate or movable items. That would be from both. So therefore, maybe that's what Rav was giving. Maybe Rav is not disagreeing with Rav Nuna. Maybe when he was saying Rizan Mechiti Da'aliyah means to say from the Chiti of Aliyah Da'av, when we're evaluating the characteristics of the father, how much he would have given, and that's even from Metatlan, like Chitim. Maybe no. Maybe it was literally for the mezainim, for the sustenance, and although the Tanai of the Ksuba is like the Ksuba, and it cannot be collected from a Taltlin, because the whole reliance of the document is on real estate, because that's always around. But Rav held like the Takanas Aliyah, which that's what we mean when we say Mechita D'Aliyah. Because as the Gemara explains, Amay Aliyah, what does it mean Aliyah? It means Midvarim Toivim Shenemar Ba'aliyah. It means the good things that were said in the Aliyah, in the attic. So it doesn't really mean that this wheat was in the attic. It means from the teachings that were expounded in the attic. Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg says Ba'aliyah Skino, that in the upper story, in the loft they instituted, that the daughter should get fed from the movable items. So that's our question. When Rav said this teaching that he was giving the daughters from the Chita D'Aliyah, is that for Parnasa, which means the Nedunya, and that is like Shmuel, or was it actually Toma Mezainis, like this Takanas Aliyah that Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg says the institute that should be even from a Talmud too? Masas Tashma it's being a raya that it was literally Mezainis, because the Yadei did Benai, who is a Chud Reb Chi Bar Abba, in his possession having a Talmud the Yasmi, he had the movable items of the orphans. And also the Kamei Shmuel became in front of Shmuel. Amalei Shmuel said to him, Zil Zoin, go and feed the daughters. Says Gemara, my love, isn't it Lumezayni? That it was for feeding the Gravisa by Yisef Zil, they hold the Rizah by Yisef. So that says the Gemara, not necessarily Hasan Lafanasav, that could have been for the Nadin, Ushmul L'Tamei. Shmuel goes according to his reasoning. The Shmuel says, L'Farnasa, for the Nedunya. Shaman Pa'av, we evaluate by the father, and therefore that would apply even by Metallic. But the Gemara says, there's a story in Arda. The Dun Dayonid in Arda, and the judges in Arda, they judge to feed the girls from Metallic. So to Bepumbadis, another place in Babel. Ba'agvi, Rav Chana, Babizna, and he collected also to give them mezainis from Metallic. But Amalur of Nachman said to them, Zilu Ahadru, go give it back. If not, I'm going to go and take that mansion of yours away as a way, because it could only be from Karka, which Tesa says obviously he held that the Torah Dvar Mishnah, and if you interpret the Dvar Mishnah, the din gets undone, and you guys are making a big mistake, because no, it's clear that the Banas, as we see in our Mishnah, are only fed from the Karka, because we're comparing it to the other Tanai Ksuba of Habonim Yirshu. And just like Habonim Yirshu is by Karka, as we'll see later on in this parak of Kesuvos Bin and Dichron, so to the Banas Nizayin, this is only from Karka, and not like you guys are doing and taking from Metatlan. Now, the Bami but Abasi Saba, they thought Lamezim of Metatli, that to feed the girls, that the orphans from movable items. So Rabbi Yaakov said to them, Milsa de Rabbi Yechim Shlakish, like Avda Ba'uvda. Some of Rabbi Yechim Shlakish they didn't want to act on. Atun Avda Ba'uvda, you're going to go ahead and do and try to take away, that's not appropriate. Now, Rabbi Lazar Saba Lamezim Metatli. Rabbi Lazar thought he's going to feed the girls Metatli. So Rabbi Shimon ben Eliyakim, these are again many stories that there are those who attempted to do Mezainim Metallim and that they were told not to. So on that, and Rabbi Shimon ben Eliyakim said, Rebbe, my teacher, I know by you that you're not doing it from the attribute of justice. You're right, really, she's only supposed to get from Karka. But you're doing the attribute of compassion. The problem is, Shemi, you're out Talmud, and maybe the students are going to see, and they're going to establish this as the halacha of future generations that you could collect mezainis from Metallim. I'd like to bring another story. Who the Asa Kamei Rabbi Yosef? There's a person that came from Rabbi Yosef. Amalu, he said to them, okay, how will the Metamri Dal, would you give her from the dates that are on the
mbudges, which those are the mats that they would put beneath the palm trees, which when they would harvest the dates. Now that's metal, that's movable item. Those are the dates that are on the mats. So I'm only Abaye said to Rabbi Yisrael, I don't understand. If this individual would have been a creditor, would the master have given him such a thing? In other words, even a creditor who has a stronger ability to collect from mishubadim, from properties that have a lien on it, cannot collect from the movable items of orphans. So the bonus for them is zonis, which they actually can't even collect from mishubadim. You're going to tell me they can collect from these metalim from the orphans? So on that, Amalei said to him, no. The chazi lebudi kamina. What I was saying was, it's that they're fit for the mats, meaning it's very close to the time of the harvest, but it's still attached. So therefore, that's considered as mekar koi, and therefore you can collect them. So on that say he asked as he continued about the alv. Wait a second, if that's the case, then Seif said at the end of the day we know kol ha'imid ligazes, which Taisa says although it's a machlekes in Shavuos in Daf Mem Gimel, but still the Maisa Halach is like that opinion that whatever is waiting to be cut and harvest could cause a dummy. It's like it's already cut. So again, it's really like metallim. So that's the Gemara. No, the tzricha lediklik. I mean, I was saying that it still needs the tree, needs the palm tree. It's not ready to be harvested. Those are the dates that I was saying that to give her because that's considered mekar koi, and that she has a right to collect mazon. But you're right, there's no right to collect the mazon abanis from metallim because we compare it to the other tonight's Kesuvos Daf, which that, as we'll see at the end of the Masech, is only by mekar koi and not by metallim. Ain't there any time.